Star Trek Picard cinematographer Jon Joffin. John, thank you so much for doing this. Coming into the show for season 3, I guess, what was your, overall discussion and approach of how the visuals should look for this season?
It's first of all, thanks for having me. And it was a new approach because it's the final season, and things are getting very dark for certain reasons, and the ship is under attack. There's a darkness around. That's sort of the theme of the season. So they wanted the show to be much darker than it was before. And it was a bit tricky too, because you have fans who like go years and decades back, and they're used to seeing the show a certain way. So it was a bit tricky coming in there and figuring out how dark to go and how far to push it. The other thing too was they talked about the show being the Star Trek Next Generation movie that never was. So Terry, the showrunner and writer, and he actually directed the last 2 episodes. Huge Star Trek fan. He really wanted to do justice to it, and he felt it should be like the last Star Trek feature film. So everything, the production design, everything about it was set out to be like a feature film. And the idea was to do a lot better shots, to do even fewer shots, but just to really have a real theatrical kind of feel. And that's sort of what we were going for. That was the marching order.
That's really great, but it's like you said, like it sounds like a lot of difficulty to try and juggle, like you said, like people have like a memory of obviously Next Generation, or like kind of like how Star Trek should look, and then versus like doing all these things. So I guess, like, how did you find that sweet spot of how dark to go and like kind of like how to make it look exactly like it does, which is, like you said, I think it's like obviously like a feature film. It does look like that. It looks like a Star Trek movie that we could have seen, like, which is really cool.
Thanks. Yeah. When I met with them at first, what I said to them, and as a kid, I watched Star Trek Next Generation. I loved the show. I said to them, for me, and I started talking about Star Wars, and I said, when I saw Rogue One for the first time, it was the first Star Wars movie that felt real. The lighting was real. It felt fantastic yet natural, and I wanted to push I wanted to push it in that direction. I wanted softer, more gentle lighting. And I wanted it to feel real. So for example, at the end, when we end up in the Borg lair is typically green. Green is the color, but it's always been like a very theatrical kind of green. And we'll talk with Terry, and the production designer, and my gaffer, Len Levine, who's brilliant. And we talked about making it more of an industrial green, which felt more real to me. So I think once you make things, I mean, I know you're in space and it's a fantastical show, but the more you can ground it in reality, the more believable it is, and the more impact I think it's going to have. So that was sort of the way we pushed it. And then in terms of darkness, I think there's a way to make things dark but still see things. So you can have backgrounds that are darker. You can have enough light on actors' faces. So we set out to do a show that wasn't shot brightly and then just crushed down in color timing. We set to have this darker look where you could actually see things. And I've had some feedback where people feel that's what we achieved. So that was really rewarding to hear.
Yeah, not just because we're chatting, but I mean, like, it's noticeable because I've seen a lot of shows, and it's certainly a lot of spectacle FX shows where it's hard when you're watching it in your home with like the lights all on or whatever. It's hard to see sometimes because you're not. But this, it's very, it is. You could tell that difference that you put into it. Then I think because it's easy, it does come through. Yeah, you mentioned like being a fan of Next Generation, and like obviously like this season is really great. I know the fans were very excited about it. You bring back the Enterprise D, which is just awesome in episode 9. I guess like how do you approach like shooting on the bridge in that sequence and like having the whole cast there? It's just a remarkable moment, I guess. Like, how did you kind of like think about how that should look? And again, like we said, like balancing the memories people have of watching that set and that setting versus like making it new for the show.
Yeah, that was definitely, I mean, that was a very special moment to stand on the bridge, because that set was built to the inch. Like it was an exact duplicate. And to stand on that set in the morning and watch the actors walk in, they'd spend all this time of their lives there, and it was a real high point for them. to see them walk in and start tearing up, you know, to see Patrick in tears, it was quite a special moment. So yeah, and then because we're dealing with a direct memory, that was tricky too with the lighting, because we wanted to maintain a rich sort of look. But you know, what we did really was, the first time they're in the Enterprise, the lights all turn on. It's definitely, if you go back and you look at it, it's always very warm. So we really kept that warmth, and we did light it a little bit more bright than perhaps I felt it should have been, but it was the right thing to do, because here we are, we're back, you know, we're back in our memory of how it was. But as it progressed, they were under attack and they were under battle. So we had the license to start turning lights off and getting a little bit darker and getting back towards the way the show was. So yeah, it was just it was a balancing act, that's for sure. So yeah.
And then how about, like you said, like getting, the other thing I think is great about that sequence when they're first like on the bridge again is like you have like individual shots almost of every actor and character reacting as characters, but also probably reacting as like you're bringing that baggage or that memory of like you said, like these actors have been on this show, or the memory of that is decades long, right? Like it's just like, and I just found that really fascinating. I guess, like, can you talk about like, yeah, like getting those, like capturing those performances, like you said, like Patrick Stewart probably crying in real life, but also like as Jean-Luc, you know, on the Enterprise, it just is like a lot of like life and art commingling, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't want to get in the way of it. We wanted to capture the moment, so we tried not to do anything that was too splashy or fancy. We just, you know, you had this amazing production design, you have these amazing memories, you have these incredible performances. We just wanted to keep it pretty simple. So, you know, we didn't really do anything fancy in the Enterprise. The Enterprise spoke for itself. The only thing that was a little bit fancy was the sequence where all the lights turn on, which was a fun thing to do. So yeah.
How about in general, getting like to work with Patrick here in as Jean-Luc Picard here, and like you said, like as a fan, like I guess like, yeah, like what surprised you, I guess, or about that, or like, you know, how is he, you know, like how is it capturing his performance? Is this iconic character and in this role, basically?
For sure. Well, I mean, the amazing thing is he's 80 years old and he's still doing it, and he's still got that magic. And when he speaks in that voice, he just, and he knows the character better than anyone else because he was the character. So luckily, Terry, the showrunner, really knows Star Trek too. So the script he wrote was really true to Patrick and to the character Picard. So yeah, it was amazing to see. It was amazing to see the performances. It's amazing to see the friendships. Jonathan Frakes, Gates, Marina, Worf. He was fantastic. Michael Dorn. Just that they have such a friendship. So just to be there and to see that all happening, and then I ended up bringing in another operator towards the end of the show, a gentleman named Chris Crossgrove. And he came in, and the guys told me that he had actually worked on Star Trek Next Gen. And he came into set, and when they all saw him, they lost their mind because he actually DP'd some of the Next Gen episodes. So having him there was really great. And it was really, what was really exciting too was having him there, and he had been there, but he was embracing the lighting we were doing on the show and how it had evolved. It was still the same. And that was really rewarding to see that and to have him there. So yeah,
that's awesome. And I mean, I guess it's got to be rewarding too to have, like, I mean, the fan response, I think, especially to like this third season, was like really remarkable. I know Star Trek fans who would like text me every week and be like, oh my, like just losing their minds over this show. Yeah. And I guess, like you said, like kind of like really succeeding on that execution of like creating something that stands alone is new, but also like really does respect what came before.
The fans. Yeah. It was tough too, because it was almost a year before the show aired, and we had all these characters who showed up, and we had the Enterprise D, and we couldn't say anything. So it was it was definitely tricky. But yeah, so great to see people reacting so well to the show, because you know we put a lot of love into it. There were a lot of special moments on set. Every time a character came onto set, our first AD, Ian Caleb, who was fantastic, he would do such a great talk introducing the character, and it just, it didn't feel like the typical show. It felt like family, because they were all family, and it felt really warm. So yeah, I was very lucky to be a part of it. I mean, myself as a teenager, I couldn't imagine that I'd be standing on the Enterprise D watching these actors walk in next to me, let alone being a part of it. So
yeah. No, that's awesome. We have to wrap up, but I just want to ask you, like, obviously, like you said, like you've been a fan of the show since you were a teenager, and then working on, I guess now with all that experience of both like practically working on Star Trek and being a fan of it, like what makes a great shot for a Star Trek, property, I guess. Like what is something that you would say like is like a quintessential need for a Star Trek shot?
That's a tough question. I mean, I think it's all, I honestly, like, as much as it's as a science fiction show and there's effects and there's things going on, it's really character based and it's all about the characters. And I think just having a good close up on one of those performances is what really tells the story.
Yeah, definitely. Star Trek Picard cinematographer Jon Joffin, thank you so much, John. Appreciate it.
Thank you.